Welcome back. I've got Dr. Brett Carolla of the Cultural Engineering Studies Research Anthology, and we just are happy to bring you the third part in the series. And these are so beautiful. Now, last time you were here, we did NASA, right? We did what did I call it? Meatballs and
Oh yeah, and then the
meatballs.
other one was Armageddon
Army,
was the second
yes.
part. Was
Well, how correct were we about all of that crazy stuff? And we're going to get into it even more tonight. Um, so hold up your beautiful copy here. They
got
are,
some water on mine, but it's still in good shape.
don't use it for coasters, okay? These are
Yeah.
beautiful. They are full color, um, very well researched by very respectable doctors and a ufologist and my friend. So I'm glad to have you here tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Glad to be back. And you are in the magazine. I'm sorry, you are in the research anthology
Yeah.
as well. You're in the research anthology as well. Yeah, this is volume three of Cultural Engineering Studies. And you mentioned this. I have the other takes too. So we initially called it issue, but we're calling them volumes. So issue number one, as it says up here, was here, and Jay, one of Jay's essays appeared in here about the Millennium Show, which ended up in the his third esoteric Hollywood book, I believe, and he graciously mentioned that it was first in here, and there we thank him. And then the second one, which was so the second one was really themed around religious transhumanism. It's the term, basically. The religious interpretation of transhumanism, its relation to cultural engineering, which is a huge topic. And then so the third one, the one we're talking about today, I'm going to talk about my article, yours. The third one is really themed around neo-Gnosticism, as I use the term. So just we start with the terms. It's like the Gnosticism is kind of a term that's bandied about uh, quite a bit. Maybe it comes in, maybe it's going out of fashion a little bit now, but it certainly has been in fashion. And it's used very promiscuously. What does it mean? It's often used to describe what's going on in Hollywood movies. I mean, there's this obvious motif or trope of this demiurgic figure of this master manipulator who creates his own world and has people trapped in it that don't know it's their world. And this relates to the ancient Gnostics, because that's the kind of the primary use of the term is these groups of heretics that were infiltrating the churches, and indeed St. Paul and Peter and others are writing against some of these specific groups, among others, but especially these Gnostics. But this is related to their worldview, but with a crucial difference. The neo-Gnosticism that typifies Hollywood, and I think also that relates to the tech elite, the people driving the transhumanist movement in many ways. It's what our friends Paul and Philip Collins, the Collins brothers, would understand probably as an immanentized Gnosticism, is a Gnosticism that denies the transcendent dimension and sort of collapses everything into the world, which then is understood in terms of information and data and stuff computers can can do stuff with and manipulate, right? I call that dataism is a term I use. It's kind of related to it where Yuval Harari uses dataism to mean something a little different, but I use the term dataism, but that's kind of the metaphysics of it. And so it's that you see in these Hollywood movies. Now I'm writing about in the article that rounds out that bookends the third volume, which is called kind of a it began really as an academic paper, so that's why it's a little like it's got a lot of big words. Hermeneutics of Total Suspicion
Right.
is what I'm calling it, but it's about how the ancient
So,
Gnostics interpreted the like perverse way they interpreted the Bible, specifically Genesis 3 really is what I focus on to sort of show this way of interpreting things in this framework and then how that gets passed on and how that's really the core of Gnosticism, modern Gnosticism, neo-Gnosticism.
so the title of it is Hermeneutics of Total Suspicion, right? Gnostic Inversion and the Serpent. Now, real quick, just tell us what hermeneutics means. Um,
It's just the system of interpretation. It's an academic
okay.
term, but it's so there there's a term hermeneutics of suspicion
Uh-huh.
that I discussed. It's thrown around a lot in the humanities, and so it's kind of a play on that hermeneutics of suspicion. It's a hermeneutics of total suspicion.
Okay.
The
So, yeah, tonight is going to be pretty much all about Gnosticism and NASA and the Serpent and all of this wrapped up in your article. And it's really beautiful, the illustrations. You guys can see that the pictures. I actually used this picture in my first book too, because it's a pretty classic magician type, you know, the vision of Ezekiel here.
Flammarion, they call it the
Yeah,
Flammarion
that's what it is.
etching or something. It's not that old, isn't it? Like in the 19th century, but it looks kind of it's like in a
Yeah, it
medieval
looks like
looking
a wood
style, a
carving.
Renaissance style.
Hmm. So, like you said, most Hollywood movies with a sort of esoteric interpretation are going to be a sort of Gnostic type movie. Like, just name one, like Tron, The Matrix, uh, like you said, escaping reality or going above the creator to another level of understanding. So this would be something they were fighting in the first century. We talked a little bit about that in the show called From Rome to Washington, D.C., where we were talking about the presentation I gave at the church in November. And so all of Colossians actually is Paul fighting against these Gnostic interpretations of the gospel and angelic worship, elemental worship, thinking that there are levels to understanding, and that's where we get him using the words like pleroma, like Christ is the fullness, like we already have this. You don't have to go above the creator to some Gnostic, Kabbalic overlord that is not personal. So what we're going to be talking about tonight has to do with that. And also, you made a great point that not all Gnostic revelations are the same. So the serpent can be good in one place and bad in another, right? So,
Yeah. Well, that's so the truth is like that the Gnostics are not, and many of your viewers will know a lot of this, so it's kind of old hat to them. But the ancient Gnostics are not like one group. They're not
yeah.
one specific group. It was series of related groups that the St. Irenaeus and identified as Gnostics. There was at least one of them called themselves the Gnostics. But so it becomes this catch-all term, and it's debatable whether groups like the Manichaeans or the Mandaeans should be considered Gnostic. They're Gnostic-like, and so there's a variety of these I guess the technical term is kind of mythopoesis, like they're writing their own scriptures.
Hmm. Fan
If you
fiction.
know yeah, like if you know, and I think that's if you know Miguel Connor, the Gnostic Eon Bites podcast. I think that's part of the kind of tagline of the podcast, like sort of writing your own scriptures or something like that. I used to listen to it years ago,
Uh-huh.
which is how I got involved in all this sort of my own personal interest in Gnosticism. Um, uh, but Yeah, it's like how to sort of frame with the ancient Gnostics. So there's really there's a whole bunch of there's all these different groups and there's some different categories of them. And I think what the sort of man on the street, person on X, whatever it takes as the Gnostics, it's kind of like this group called the Sethians. Sometimes it's called the Sethians, and they're the ones that have the creator as absolute evil. Because
Okay.
most of these Gnostic groups, including Marcion a Gnostic,
Uh-huh.
usually not. I don't think so, but he's similar in that he doesn't think that the creator God is the true God. So he's kind of quasi-Gnostic. But neither Marcion nor the so-called Valentinians view the creator God as absolutely evil either, as the demiurge is absolutely evil. But there were groups of these people that get broadly grouped into this category called Sethians. It goes back to scholars. Schenck, different scholars. I'm trying to remember some of them. I can't remember all the origins of these. It's been a while since I was deeply immersed in this scholarship, but they call them the Sethians
Mhm.
because the myth, they have their own myth of the figure of Seth in the Bible that becomes really crucial to
Uh,
their
Adam and
sort of
Eve's
salvation history.
son, another
Yeah,
son. Okay. Because you
right.
said this Gnostic hermeneutics is defined by inversion. This is particularly true in the case of the so-called Sethians. So they have a different idea of, they think they're descended from Seth or,
Well, yeah, and they think, well, so they believe that there's three types of people, and you see this sort of broadly related to Christian theology, but sort of perverted, where there's these pneumatic types of people or spiritual types of people,
uh-huh,
namely themselves, who have the knowledge that's going to save them. And then there are these psychic or soulish types of people that, depending on what your group you're talking about, like they're not going to do as well. And then
uh-huh.
you have the helic or the material people that are just doomed, right? And
The normies and the NPCs.
yeah, right. It's like that. The normies and the NPCs, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Uh, So yeah, that's how they see, and so they're the root. That Seth is like the pneumatic seed, the seed of Seth,
Okay.
and there's this sort of salvation history. Some of them trace that. So the non-commodity so-called scriptures, these non-commodity writings, these Gnostic writings that were discovered in 1946 in Egypt, are the primary source. We had before that of sort of direct Gnostic writings because most of them were all gone. Uh, but you have the heresiologists and the truthfully the non-commodity texts, they are probably later and they don't deal with anywhere near all the different groups that are discussed in Epiphanius and Irenaeus and the heresiologists, the church fathers that talk about these groups, and we can match some of them up to non-commodity, but others have all these strange there's all kinds of there's just a huge variety of them, kind of a bewildering brain. And I guess that's the reason I'm writing this
Mhm.
is that there is sort of something though that makes them all the same. It is natural to group them all because there are certain their way of interpreting the scriptures and kind of how they see underlying spiritual reality, the condition that they all believe that it's some secret knowledge that you achieve that's only for a few that you achieve through sort of these mystical ascents
Mhm.
that then teaches them to reverse engineer all the scriptures and all kinds of religious writings, and so they come up with this wild patchwork of stuff. The person that I worked under, April DeConnick, who's one of the leading Gnostic scholars in the country at Rice, I initially came I didn't she ended up not I ended up not her not being on my committee and my advisor, but I worked under her. So her book is called The Gnostic New Age because she, I think, rightly frames it as like, and there's other Rolf Vandenbroek is how to pronounce his name. I mean, yeah, like there, it's kind of like the counterculture spirituality is what was going on. They were, and there was, the thing is like in Egypt, because a lot of this is in Egypt. That's where you find the non-commodity writings. There was like this whole culture of spiritual tourism there at that point, like, and there was so much like one of the books that people don't read that often in Irenaeus's Against the Heresies is like his exposing all the different tricks that these Egyptians priests use to do these magic tricks and fool people.
Mhm.
And so getting initiated into the mysteries and all the spiritual tourism, it was huge. In fact, there's a question of why like these non-commodity scriptures are written in Coptic, and Coptic was this late Egyptian language, and there's a question of why are these things in Coptic? Because it's clear in some cases, like the so-called Gospel of Thomas, that it was originally in Greek. It wasn't written in Coptic. Like none of these, they were all translated from Greek, almost certainly. And I think the best theory on why they're in Coptic is because it was like because it made them more like Egypto and Illuminati, and it made them
Yeah.
seem, yeah,
Well,
more esoteric to be Egyptian.
that's probably why they were drawn to it because mystery schools back then, before the advent of Christ, there was always levels and secret hidden degrees and how you could always progress over people and be a more secret wizard or what, whatever, 360 degrees of masonry. And the church was like, well, this is our, ritual and we do it in the open and everybody is with us and there's no other secret spiritual attainments that you can do by supplicating angels, like we said, or you said they read the text in a transgressive style regarded as deeply perverse, and they privilege mystical experience as a source of hidden knowledge. So it's what did you say? The direct transmission. So they thought they were getting direct
Yeah.
transmissions, right?
So they're in truth, right? They've um suffering from some form of prelapse or spiritual delusion,
Yeah.
but their, if you will, their mystical epistemology is such that they're not able to correct for it. They're certain they achieve this certainty, and then it teaches them how to read the scriptures and the truth that's already there. And so with regard to Genesis 3 and the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the creator is an evil figure for
Mm-hmm.
these Sethian groups,
Mm-hmm.
and or is a more or less evil figure for the Sethian groups. But they're not convinced that the serpent, especially the ones that like these non-commodity writings, they're not convinced that the serpent is actually who the instructor or the illuminator is. So they're basically revalorizing Satan, but they're saying it's a trick that the dark forces are using to confuse you. Now, how does this work? Is that because the evil creator God created not just the body but also the soul, and so has basically like this sort of mind control power.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how this is going to translate into Hollywood, Truman Show, and so like has this sort of mind control power to control your perception of reality, but isn't all powerful, right? Because he's actually this bumbling abortion, and they give him all of these like sacrilegious names of God. They call him Yaldabaoth, and he's a dumb idiot god.
Is the picture right there? Right there.
Yeah, that's one of these sort of gemstone pictures of Yaldabaoth, and that's another something. And so, uh, but these, but Yaldabaoth is itself just the sort of like mistake that happened. They have an emanationist view of creation where there is the highest principle. It's a very Platonic, Platonian system where the highest principle, some call it God or the God of God or the good or whatever, the highest principle in their system is um, beyond everything, is completely transcendent and is detached from all creation, couldn't create, but there's an emanation of stuff from it. And somewhere along the way, because of the distance, things start to go wrong. And Sophia creates, yeah, and often versions of this, Sophia creates the Yaldabaoth character or these other demons, and they want to be gods themselves. They create their own, so we're trapped in the world. They're trying to trap spirit, but there's this constant war going on between the forces of the eons beyond the created order.
Mm-hmm.
The eons are coming to help. And so to them, Jesus ends up being like an eonic helper, right? It's not,
Mm-hmm.
there's no incarnation of matter because they, of course, totally reject matter. The whole, yeah, I mean, the bulk of Christian theology has no place here. But they appropriate this figure of Jesus, not unlike New Agers and whatever, Jesus and Buddha, it's all great kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they appropriate the figure of Jesus as this emissary. And so often the instruct, like in the so-called Apocryphon of John and Nag Hammadi, which is a classic version of this myth, it's not a serpent, it's an eagle that tells them to eat the fruit from the tree. And the eagle is actually Jesus. So
Mm-hmm.
to give you an idea of all of the inversions is the word. Yes, it's a series of different inversions where the scripture as it exists is trying to trick you, and it's giving you the demiurge's version of events because you're trapped in his world, the matrix world. But if you can decode it, if you have the secret decoder goggles, you got if you then they live glasses,
Yeah.
you can read it.
If
Or
you're Keanu, you can see through the Matrix code and punch Mr. Agent Smith or whatever. And so you said it kind of takes on this like trust no one motto, and the ordinary human faculties, including the senses and the intellect, are unreliable to them. And the watchword is trust no one. So, like we said, only direct communications from the aeons. attained by slipping through ordinary cognitive barriers, like mystical pseudo-illumination can dispel the all-pervading tyranny of ignorance. So this made me think of the direct communications that we're going to be seeing probably in some kind of alien psyop. People are going to be like, I heard them speak to me in my mind, or I channeled them while meditating. You're going to hear about, like we're one with these other beings by direct communication because I was doing a show with Courtney Turner and we figured out how a lot of this Buddhist stuff is also very Gnostic, like hatred of the body and physical matter and escaping the matrix. That's all very Tantra and Buddhist coded too. Do you realize that?
Yeah, yeah. And I was just talking to my friend Hans. I'm about to record tomorrow on the Doors and our Oliver Stone series. But yeah, his involvement with some of that Tibetan stuff, and it's really demonic. I'm reminded all the time just how deeply like perverted and demonic, um, and you think back to the Free Tibet CIA psyop in the 90s and all this stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so what it leads to is this sort of bottomless suspicion,
Hmm.
this condition, because you have some Gnostics that we have evidence of them, at least in the church fathers. We don't, the Nag Hammadi doesn't have an example of this. Well, not exactly, but some venerated the serpent. Now, some people wanted to have the idea this was common. I don't know if it's common, but there are examples of it. The was it the Nacenes? There were certain groups called Ophites, some of them that just seems to refer to some that venerated the serpent and the Paratics. And they often, so it seems like they did some sort of simple inversion. Oh, the scripture's trying to trick you. They're telling the demiurge just telling you not to eat the fruit. You should eat the fruit, and the serpent is good. And there's descriptions of these like what do you want to call them? These sort of like black mass sort of things done with snakes,
Yeah.
blessing the food. And there's other, we can get into the other sort of later Gnostic stuff, like serious black mass stuff, consuming feed. But there's a variety of some are like super ascetic or encratic, and then some, because of their attitude toward matter doesn't matter.
Uh-huh.
So it's understandable and totally believable that you would have some groups that are just like they don't have sex, they don't eat anything but wild berries and whatever, and then you have other groups that are completely given over to a satanic lifestyle. The Borborites, for example, Epiphanius describes, seem to be an example of this. I think that the Carpocratians were an example of this. So that's yeah, so that's where these attitudes toward matter can go. Now, um, so it's the hermeneutic, yeah, that they pass on this bottomless suspicion. And so, yeah, they're one group thinks the other group is deluded, and they're constantly reconfiguring the scriptures, and it never ends because it's like I use the metaphor, or it's more than a metaphor, I guess. It sort of is what's going on. Is this reverse psychology and double reverse and triple reverse? Like it's this mind game
Yeah.
that you're playing with. Yeah.
Well, since they're so suspicious and they're always like kind of on guard by being tricked by the archons, right? So the archons are responsible for lies and leading you astray on your path. It's kind of like that scene from The Princess Bride, right? Where he's like, well, I clearly can't choose the wine in front of you. You can't choose the wine in front of me. So that's like the Gnostic mindset is like, I can't trust any of these options because it could be, like you said, double trickery or quadruple or whatever lies from the archonic dimension. So it's really schizophrenic almost the way that they.
Well, then, as you pointed out, the nature of these types of initiatory occult groups is they always want to create a new gnosis, a new inner order, and they're recruiting. And then then you just get charlatans and people
Mhm.
like that they figure out how to do this, how to milk this for money as well.
No.
And but that's what like Blavatsky, who I think was a double, triple agent for all kinds of intelligence people and was up to all sorts of no good. But at one point, because her followers in Theosophy were kind of unsatisfied with the last ritual or something, she created like I can't remember what it's called, but this sort of new inner cabinet, right? And of course you have to pay more money
Hmm.
and yeah to get and that's how it was in the ancient world too. I mean, if you read Apuleius, the Golden Ass, this third century novella by I think it's like a sort of semi-autobiographical-ish story about a guy that did went through all these rites of Isis. But yeah, you have to keep paying for the next round, you
Yeah.
know.
We were laughing on one show because the fee to do the Eleusinian uh mystery rites was like piglets. So you had
Yeah.
pay piggies, your little pay piggies to do.
Well, I think they're well, yeah, the Eleusinian mysteries. Um, I, it's been a while since I studied the rite in every detail, but I seem to remember thinking that the pig thing, like where you have to wash this pig that's probably squirming, and like it was part of it was to sort of wear you out because they're trying to get you, uh, it's they're doing a little bit of sensory deprivation, they're doing a little bit of stress, they're doing stuff to tweak, and then they give you seemingly give you a drug, this kykeon, which I'm convinced is probably some kind of ergot-like substance that made people hallucinate because the ritual seems to have so consistently had an effect on people over such a long period of time that seems to relate to believing in the afterlife and cycles and um seems like it was yeah, I mean you could even believe a lot of paganism probably came out of that.
Mhm.
So that's anyway, that was my thought about the piglet thing.
Well, that's the bypassing the ordinary cognitive barriers, i.e., being in your right mind when you make good decisions, versus when you are in some kind of shamanistic, like woo-woo cult or Gnostic cult. Um, you're gonna.
Well, it's like well, that's about like mystical knowledge versus just purely intellectual knowledge. So I mean, I would agree that kind of like there is a mystical intuitive knowledge, but there's also mystical intuitive delusion or prelast.
Mhm.
And, the kind of highest truths are not going to be captured through the cold intellect alone. So I don't think they're wrong in that sense, but um, you kind of get into deep waters, right? When you go uh, on that sort of quest for the Holy Grail and searching for truth. And it's really part of this counter mystical tradition I call, Jay used the term, but I've sort of tried to sort of theorize it in my book that's coming out, apotheosis. So my dissertation is coming out. It's going to be transhumanism and the religion of apotheosis. Hopefully
Hmm.
this fall,
Mhm.
maybe through Whitf and Stock. Um, and so that's really at the heart of Gnosticism too, because the difference between apotheosis and theosis, which is the proper form of mysticism that the church teaches, the Orthodox Church teaches, is that with apotheosis, the like self is identified in substance with God. So that's the Gnostics believe they are spirit. And
Mhm.
kind of like the realization that you are spirit but so in a sense, the world is not real. Like the Demiurge just created a literally fake world, an unworld that sort of dissolves in a sense once you realize your root and who you really are, which is God in substance. Whereas in Theosophy, you're not God in substance, right? You're uniting with God's energies, and that's in a way more mystical and more miraculous because the it's a divine sort of individuality is a divine gift, right? And
Mhm.
having a some kind of separate existence, and then for it to also coexist with a complete union, such that you're completely also that's actually more mystical. So in a way, apotheosis is a kind of stupid mysticism. It's a kind of poor man's mysticism that becomes the pop mysticism in a way of the ancient world, and all the way through to what Christopher Partridge calls the O culture, which
Uh-huh.
is now the pop culture through Marvel and all this stuff. Like this is the religion that various forms of media are pushing one way or another. And so the Gnosticism and the transhumanism and the apotheosis are all really of a piece and they all really fit together.
Well, this reminds me of Eastern Nirvana and always the journey going back to the one where we don't have any distinctions, but this is like a sort of an unmaking of creation in Genesis where God put boundaries and distinctions and divisions between things so that we could have a, real physical world. And what they're trying to do is obliterate everything, including their own ego or selfhood, and merge it back into the pan or all is one. And we're seeing that in the the Buddhist mindset, like the Dr. Bronner's scrawling screeds on the soap, like all is one, but that's not true. That's actually unmaking creation. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or trying?
I'm not an expert on Eastern religion, but it strikes me that this, apotheosis tendency is like really super on display in the,
Hmm.
whatever the Atman is Brahman formula um, and Eastern spirituality. And then it's just, yeah, it's just the way that it's been marketed, the way that they've kind of, now with no demons, the way they've marketed it to the West since because I don't think I mean maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but because again I'm not an expert, but as I understand it, the what you might call the folk spirituality of India is just really all about demon possession.
Hmm.
And I've talked to people who've been there, and it's like, in fact, I discussed that with an Indian Uber driver. Like, and then he was like, yeah, he was like showing me, and then I was very uncomfortable because he was driving, he was putting a movie on, he was like showing me some like Bollywood movie with these demons in it. Actually,
Yeah.
this is a real story. Um, so and then the Tibetan stuff and just and Dalai Lama and the movie Empty Man. I analyzed Thomas and I PSYOP Cinema duo. We do the PSYOP Cinema show as well for those that don't know. Yeah, we did an episode analyzing Empty Man and a couple other films with Jay, and that was really eye-opening. That movie. If people don't know it, like the plot is that there's essentially this it's really demons are at the heart of it, but there's this cult, this like powerful cult that has these different tiers, right? And at one tier it's kind of like Eastern religion and Buddhism, and it's just those kind of, yeah, all is one and those kind of, and then like in the pop culture it's this urban legend, like it's
Hmm.
operating as these dark urban legends. And then deeper in as you go deeper inside the cult, it's like group demon summoning
Hmm.
is, and it's all this like, yeah, it's basically this like pyramid scheme being run by demons possessing powerful, influential people. And it's kind of like showing you like that's what is at the heart of Buddhism. And it's yeah.
I know it's so crazy, and it has the apotheosis theme. It has the androgyny, so it's about gurus like siphoning energy from women and men, but especially women because they need that like female. They call it the gynergy, like energy with a GY, and they incorporate that into their self, and it's a whole thing. So. The apotheosis and the Eastern mysticism is very Gnostic. They were a lot of parallels between that. Oh, and the serpent. Okay, so let me show you this funny picture because it's a good segue because some of the Gnostics had a positive view of the serpent and some of them had a negative one. But I found this conspiracy candy meme. Um, I don't know if you can read that. It says NASA in Hebrew means to deceive. And
Yeah,
so
I've
it's
seen that
got
before.
the Hebrew word greatly deceived, beguiled, even that word beguiled that you hear in Genesis. But yeah, so it's like, and the tongue is the you see it?
Yeah, and the tongue is
The tongue
the
is the red
um
arrow. So that's like classic conspiracy candy slop, but there is something to that. And you mentioned that group, the Nascenes. So
the Naces or Nas was a word for serpent, right?
yeah.
In Hebrew,
So
is the serpent, the serpent movement.
NAAS, I mean, I know this is like goofy schizo conspiracy stuff, but that's like NASA rearranged. So Nas is the he people love that stuff, right? They love it.
Yeah.
So some are
Um, yeah, go ahead. I'm
some
sorry.
are, yeah, against it. What were you gonna say?
No, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, let's talk about pro and anti-serpent Gnostics. And the serpent is the river flowing from Eden. So, oh, that's another parallel. So the
Yeah.
serpent energy is the Shakti that they harvest from women, right? And it's supposed to be what is the Kundalini. Have you heard these words before?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Shakti enters you, like you said, and the heart of most of these religions, I would say all of them really, is to be possessed by a demon. Voodoo is that way. Um, Freemasonry, you're supposed to have the seething powers of Lucifer now that you've like mastered being a magician on the checkerboard floor. Oh, Indian Tantra is that way. The fakirs of Hindu. So yeah, being possessed is the point of this, and it is known as a serpent energy called the Kundalini.
Yeah, that's the Paradics as well that have that myth about the river in Eden, which is
Oh, okay.
Draco, which is Christ. But then it
Yes.
gets very complicated because then they do this thing where there's like the good serpent and the bad serpent.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that some of the Gnostics do. Like rather than say the serpent is good or bad, say, no, there's a good serpent and there's a bad serpent,
Uh-huh.
you
Well, check
know?
this out. One of our fans, Harry, recommended this book. It has no author. It's just like a mysterious magic book, but it's about serpent worship. And the first chapter is kind of that, like most cultures have serpent worship, but sometimes he's good and sometimes he's bad. So maybe we'll do this in the member section. It's kind of
Is
weird.
that published by Robert Maxwell or anything?
No, Tudor Press. I don't know. There's no
Tudor
author.
Press.
It's just by some magicians. I don't know. But
Oh,
yeah.
so you go to the grocery store and there's all those like magazines about witchcraft and this and that. There's no author, you
Hmm.
know? I mean to like research who these publishers are, I've noticed, but they're just authorless.
I have a bunch
Um,
of those. That's what gave me the idea to do the weird stuff. My thing,
oh,
like,
I love that too. I have it back there on the shelf. I have the second one and it's yeah, it is. It's like a the design is like a take on a tabloid
hmm.
kind of magazine or book. Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Yeah. So in your article, they link it to a bunch of things. Draco, the sign of Cain, a magical sign that protected him. So probably some kind of serpenty.
Yeah, and so there you're getting more of the inversion. It's not common to see Cain,
Hmm.
reclaimed or revalorized and made into a good positive figure. But here's an example of them doing that. I mean, the I refer to some of this and don't go into all of it deeply, but if I because I'm talking focusing on the serpent, but stuff like the flood, for example, too, where there are some of these even Sethian groups that think the flood was like a good thing to get rid of, I don't think it was a bad thing. It was like the Demiurge was trying to, Yaldabaoth was trying to kill the seed of Seth.
Hmm.
So they can't always agree on whether some of these biblical topoi are good or bad or what they want to do with them. Um, you know, uh, so yeah, that's the way to understand. And there's other like I mentioned the idea of the rejection of matter. I mean, so there's a series of characteristics we could say that are the hallmarks or the defining characteristics of Gnosticism, but a crucial one and the one that links it to Hollywood Gnosticism is this way of reading text. But what's going to happen with the contemporary and Hollywood Gnostics is they reject any transcendent realm, so they're not trying to escape from a false world. They're trying to gain control. They're trying to be the demiurge,
Hmm. Hmm.
basically. They're trying to be the demiurge to create the world. So, but in a way, that itself is another hermeneutical inversion. It's another flipping of, oh, the real secret is that, um, there is no transcendent realm, and it's just this material realm, but the material realm is like computer-like, and we can get power over it through advanced computing technology and so on.
Would you say that a lot of Silicon Valley tech bros have this sort of ideology with the AI, like they can control this reality.
So, well, they're again, they're dataist. I mean, they just state it. Most of these people state it pretty clearly that they believe that what human beings are, their anthropology is that people consist of patterns of information or bits of information. Um, that's the basis of the whole mind uploading thing. If you like Ray Kurzweil, that I mean, you could just sort of take the software out, we can move it over to another hardware.
Hmm.
I mean, this is ridiculous and it's nuts. There's no good reason to believe any of this. Like how whatever else these people have to offer in terms of engineering and technology, and Kurzweil certainly done that, and even some of their ideas about the world. This is coming out of their religious thinking about this immanentized Gnosticism.
Well,
Because
you
oh,
hear
go ahead. Yeah,
a lot of them say that we live in a simulation.
yeah, and that's right. And that's right out of the Gnostic worldview. That there's nothing essential about the world, at least. That everything is mutable and humans are mutable and everything is changeable. So, I'm working on this article too for the Decoding Culture Foundation DCF website that'll hopefully be up this fall or winter. That's a sequel to the one we're talking about now. That's going to be about the Hollywood Gnosticism, and I want to talk about Dark City quite a bit. I think that's so even more important than The Matrix or some other movie, or Truman Show, some of that spate of Gnostic films that comes out in the late 90s. The Dark City is so key because what happens at the end of the movie is he takes over the city from the strangers, and then he can make it into anything that he wants, right?
Mhm.
That's the most simplistic way of spelling it out for you. That's really the goal, is to take control of it. Um, the dark side of that is just kind of ignored or elided uh, in Dark City, but it's of course that the power to control, um, the power to take control of the physical universe is also the power to take away people's individuality. Theoretically, right? It's mind control.
Hmm.
Um, and so like in the book coming out, I mean, I cite these mainstream articles talking about Neuralink and mind control. And I mean, like, there's even like Musk has even patented mind control technologies and stuff. There's just no question about it. Like,
I
there's,
know, I know, it's so crazy. And to see, if this is a simulation, then your fellow people are Sims. They're not real. And so they're just kind of players in your game. I think Grimes talks about that, and you just mentioned Elon Musk. So it's a very confusing religion because they don't even agree. All of the gospels don't agree what they are. Um, Going back to the serpent, so you talk about the O-fight system. I don't know if you went to like blow your nose or something. I'll just keep going.
well, there were, oh, turn my camera. There were a bunch of groups called the O-Fights, I think, or there's
Uh-huh.
a few different ones because we have the term O-Fights used by some of the heresiologists, but they're not always referring to the same group.
Uh-huh.
Um, so like some of these that's where they're called, like the word for serpent is in the name, but some of them seem definitely to have been anti-serpent, and others seem to have been, I guess, ambivalent um, about the serpent.
Well, we talk about the Aleister Crowley magic and the Kenneth Grant branch, and he calls that whole thing the Ophidian current, right? Because it's a serpent, because it's related to the Kundalini. And these Gnostics were the ones, like you said, they sort of started to glorify this as a new divinity. And then the Ophite counter Eucharist you talked about.
Yeah, that's the one with they had a serpent like slither around the bread and everything before they had this sacrilegious Eucharist of some sort.
Yeah,
But
You said Ophite counter Eucharist in which a snake is released from a basket to coil around loaves of bread and sanctify them. The participants would kiss the snake on the mouth. So in this book, I also found them talking about the snake in the orgies of Bacchus. It says the persons who took part in the ceremonies used to carry serpents in their hands and with horrid screams call upon Eva, Eva. They were often crowned with serpents while still making the same frantic exclamation. One part of the rites of Jupiter was to let a snake slip down the bosom of the person to be initiated, which was taken out below. So this is how Alexander the Great, they said, was conceived because his mother was a participant in these Greek Bacchanalias, right?
There's yeah, definitely some relationship between the excuse me, the Gnostic mysticism and the mystery religions. It's not clear, exactly what it is. Um, I don't think anybody is exactly certain, but there's definitely, and yeah, there's some connection between the use of the serpent and various pagan rites and what's going on there
Mhm.
uh, with that Gnostic group.
Well, that also makes me think of the mysteries of Apollo. So the story is Apollo slayed the serpent and it fell down a hole, and its ghost was the fumes that came up and gave the oracles of Delphi their prophecies, right? So, and they're called Pythias, and so this is another snake cult. Um,
It's actually like nitrous oxide or something similar to that is actually what they think is was producing the trance states of
yeah,
the
some kind of
Oracle of Apollo
volcanic.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like Apollo, there was an earlier form of the Apollo myth where Apollo was a serpent.
Uh-huh. I'm not
And so like
surprised.
isn't he worshipped there as a at Delphi, like, isn't he worshipped as a serpent though also? It's like there's a form of him as a serpent.
Yeah.
And you see this with like other classical gods where they are strangely associated with something that they supposedly defeated.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is a more primordial, more openly demonic form of the classical religion. I mean, they themselves, the classical Greeks, were conscious of like human sacrifices and all that kind of stuff being done by their great grandparents
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. But
Well, Marduk was supposed to kill the dragon Tiamat, and his symbol a lot of times was also like a serpent dragon. So, yes, you're correct. They are associated with the monster that they supposedly overcame in their epic, right?
yeah.
So, how does this go into Hollywood cinema now? I was just remembering there's a Gnostic guy, Michael Bertio, I think his name was. He had a cult in Haiti that was of the OTO of Kenneth Grant's branch. And he wrote a book called the Gnostic Voodoo Workbook. So, can you talk about how, like, that would relate to Hollywood and the
Well,
Gnostic Catholic Mass of
I
Holy.
I'm not sure about this because evidence in the ancient world is sketchy, but I think that like there's a sort of pattern where the earlier Gnostic groups that are invading Christian communities, which are kind of like these mixed up hippies trying to take over churches, sort of like if you imagine uh, that
Yes,
they were more
exactly what.
they were more encratic and it's super hyper ascetic and going over the top. And who knows what but there were some maybe earlier ones that were also. I mean, we know that this guy Marcus was. I think he was like a renegade disciple of Valentinus who was like giving people some kind of drug that made them prophecy within like 30 seconds. And
Hmm.
uh, but I generally I think that it's like later, like as you get into later Gnosticism, and I don't know maybe the fifth century, because Epiphanius says that he knew about these Borborites because they tried to recruit him. They had like were like sending Manson girls to try to seduce him,
Uh-huh.
and they were showing him their scriptures, and so he said he learned a lot of this stuff firsthand that that they take menstrual blood and semen and this is their right, and then they like if someone gets because they don't again if you they're usually anti-natalists. So the even the Ancranic ones are anti-natalists. They're against having children. They don't want to create more uh, prisons for the spirit
Hmm.
that can be ruled over by the demiurge. So they don't have children or they abort them. And this is what the Borborites are. They're eating the fetuses and stuff and using it in rite. Yeah. So I think that's where things go because of what human beings actually are and because of this is a destructive heresy. And so we might begin um, they're antinomians. It's like you have these two poles. You have legalism, which, as Christians, we're against legalism. That doesn't make you an antinomian. That doesn't mean like you flout the law. There's this one group. Is it the Carpocratians that they literally thought you had to commit like every possible sin because you had to go through like every configuration of experience or something? And
Hmm.
um, I should speak more intelligently about this before I just shoot off, but it involves weird prayers to different angels and there's all this stuff too, like in the Nag Hammadi, all these strange repetitions and prayers and codes and passwords and through other parts of the Gnostic literature as well. There's a lot of strange stuff like that. Um, but yes, but where was I? Where was I with that? Um, uh, so yeah, the pattern. Okay, so I think it kind of that's what happened in the ancient world, and so I maybe think that's recapitulated itself in certain ways. The Albigensians,
Hmm.
um, and the Templars, and I think that's what happens with this spirituality is it could kind of be associated both with extreme asceticism and with just total like black mass, given over to Satanism,
Hmm.
you know Dario Argento, Hollywood, Hollywood type of stuff. Uh, you know,
Well, that's not the only cult that has that ideology of, the way up is down, so the way towards enlightenment is to do every bad thing. So the Frankists are like that, Thelema is like that, Tantra is like that. That's actually called the Varma Marg or the left-hand path. Part of their way of enlightenment is to eat excrement and sweat and plaque from the teeth, and so all kinds of
it's deliberate transgression,
yes.
right? This idea that you have to do these deliberate transgressions. Um, I mean, this is like it strikes me too, like this is just sadly, it's like a brilliant sort of demonic strategy to get people to degrade themselves. Like, oh, you want the highest spiritual thing, but you got to eat poop first, or you got to do like this is
Yeah.
like a spiritual bully, like messing with you, clearly. But
Well, it's an archonic troll demon that tells you like up is down and black is white, or like, yeah, bad is good. Just exactly what you're talking about. The inversion, what hermeneutics, what did you say? Of total suspicion.
suspicion, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just bottomless suspicion. It never ends, and you keep creating new scriptures, and you keep having this sort of bottomless paranoia. I
Hmm.
mean, the difference between that and Christianity and the hermeneutics of Christianity is um, that there is the authority and the witness of the church and of the martyrs, and so yeah, I mean, interpreting the scriptures is a problem. I mean, of course, many Protestants don't see that problem, but it's a problem. It's difficult. I think the Bible's difficult to interpret at times. I
Hmm.
mean, don't you?
Hmm.
But we have this tradition. We have these all these great fathers of the church through not just in one era, not just in the ante-Nicene or the Nicene, but the post-Nicene, and they're really all saying the same thing pretty much all the time, to be honest with you. Like to cut over some of the finer points, like generally they're all the fathers are in agreement about any given question that you have. And then if it's like a path to mystical attainment, of course, as you go through monasticism and that's you have some spiritual father that's telling you to and when someone starts, I mean, my understanding is like if someone starts someone who's a monastic and they start having visions of Jesus and the Theotokos, like their urge to kind of question whether that's not spiritual delusion and whether demons aren't trying to trick them,
Hmm.
so there's like a process there. But with a kind of freelance mysticism, which is the kind of freewheeling mysticism which characterizes counterculture mysticism, and what we see, in our own era in the past century, that one is detached from any tradition. I think traditions can be bad too, right? Look at Tibetan Buddhism. Maybe they can be even worse than doing it freelance if
Hmm.
it's a really evil tradition, it's a demonic tradition. But it's not really grounded in anything too. So people are manipulating their consciousness and playing around with things. Um, and it stands to reason that that's not going to turn out well. Um, Even if you're not a Christian, I think if you've done that sort of thing, it stands to reason that just uh, playing around in the spirit world is not a safe thing to do.
No, it's not. And it really I don't have a very high threshold for like woo woo and snake handling and carryings on and like direct transmissions. You know what I mean? I hate all of that stuff. Pentecostal type, just attention seeking and even weirder, like Quakers and Shakers. Anyways, uh, tell us about your next article, the Hollywood cinema aspect of this.
Hollywood Gnosticism. So I want to show, and I at the very end of my this article, there's a kind of little epilogue there where I do introduce people to what the sequel is going to be about. How I'm going to show how that hermeneutics gets picked up by the cultural engineers, by Hollywood, but in the role of demiurge, and where they are the manipulators themselves,
Hmm.
and they're sending us through these blind alleys and mazes and rabbit holes, and immersing us in, like, selling us liberation, giving us the red apple, the red pill, but actually shunting us into a false reality. So our friend Jason,
That came with
yeah,
it.
we use that. So Jason Horsley, who's a terrific writer, and he's written articles for all three volumes. Jason has a concept, the second matrix. This idea that, essentially you seek liberation from one delusional worldview or system, but you often end up shunted into another another one, right?
Hmm.
Maybe we're and I think what the archonic forces of Hollywood are doing is trying to use us to kind of nest people in deeper and deeper false realities, while each time pretending that they're liberating them from it, and they're subjecting them to deeper and deeper forms of control. Now the red apple, the red pill comes from the red apple. And Thomas and I wrote an article, and it's up on the DCF site. It was in IM 1776 magazine, only in their print version. It's called well we we called it on red pill programming. And red pill programming is this idea that we talk about on the show, which is kind of like the second matrix. It's kind of like the way that movies will sell people liberation in various ways as a form of control. So, I mean, feminism and the sexual revolution, all that stuff. And that's what the red apple was. It was selling people liberation when in fact it was bringing them into a different form of control, a deeper form of control in a variety of ways, psychologically and socially, because controlling people's desires, their eros, is the key,
Hmm.
in some ways, to controlling. That's the advertising industry. There's a Yuan Culiano, who is a University of Chicago scholar of Gnosticism, who was murdered in a really weird incident in the bathroom, um, in 1989. But uh, Culiano, I got thinking about that incident. I lost my train of thought on Culiano. Um, but reset me here. Hey, what was I about to say here? I
We're
was
talking about they control people through arrows.
Oh yeah, so he wrote a great book called Eros and Magic in the Renaissance. That's what I was trying to remember. It's
Uh-huh.
not really he was a scholar of Gnosticism. This isn't really a Gnosticism book, but it's a brilliant book, and he writes about it focuses on a couple of a work by Marsilio Ficino and a book by Giordano Bruno, who students of the occult will esoteric will know both of these names.
Yeah.
But Bruno wrote this treatise, I guess, that Juliano interprets as like saying that the kind of the heart of magic is controlling desire and
Hmm.
controlling eros. And then Juliano, like in the conclusion of this book, talks about how kind of like uh the so-called liberal Western liberal democracies and advertising and stuff are basically a form of this magic on a mass scale. Uh, it's a very good book by Cogliano. But so that's very true, and that's all tied into this Gnostic hermeneutics, because in the Matrix, the red pill versus the blue pill is sold to the audience as a choice between, staying a normie and not getting the truth or taking the red pill, right, and being liberated. Um, but in fact, I would argue that what you're seeing is in fact an allegory of a kind of mind control, a kind of reverse psychology, mind control that basically Neo is a mind control victim. And then so a lot of this, Thomas Millery, who's the president of the DCF, who's associate editor, wrote an article, the Lego Barbie Matrix.
Hmm.
Um, who discusses the Lego movie and the Barbie movie and also the Gnosticism of the Matrix. And so the Matrix, of course, comes up pretty constantly. Jason has written quite a bit about it, and the last couple of issues, see the Matrix uh, come up
Yeah.
and all of that. But
I'd love to have Thomas on talking about Lego Barbie Matrix because we did a Barbie breakdown a couple years ago when it came out, and my take was that it was Gnostic. Barbie was, and a little bit feminist. So that was a fun one that we did. So maybe we can get Thomas on here just talking about that chapter. But so you mentioned Giordano Bruno.
yeah,
And funny that you bring that up because that came up in the Tantra show. So basically, what the yogi's mission is to extract as much feminine energy as possible and drain the women like a battery and discard them after they're done. So when they are empty husks, then and they're too old to mess with, then they're booted out. And one of the examples that they gave, so they do a form of sacred marriage ritual that they take from, the Babylonian days and they kind of tweak it. And the heart of all of the enchantments that they do is to just get the woman long enough to drain her energy. And they talk about the Giordano Bruno game. Like, how the game came out how to seduce women, basically, right? And run through them as fast as possible, and how to control people with arrows. So a lot of this stuff actually went parallel to what the red pill teaches, ironically. The manosphere red pill, I'm talking about, right?
yeah, yeah,
So the type of techniques that they would teach actually goes back to Bruno and Tantra and like how the yogis use women and yeah, just controlling their desire, their eros, making you feel like they love you. Um, Lover boy method, that's a human TRAFF technique. So I know there's a lot of things that I'm trying to connect the dots to, and it's really confusing, but it is about just controlling people by making them feel like you love them and you are the master sorcerer that has no feelings whatsoever because you've transcended that.
yeah. In recent years or decades, all this what they call in religious studies or mysticism, the scandal literature
Hmm.
about all these gurus, but it's the whole religions are scandals is the thing
Hmm.
about it. Like that's the truth. The whole religions are scandals. It's not just these Oshos and these gurus who actually when I was at Rice, I was actually an editor on the Journal of Gnosis for a time. And my boss there was the daughter of Adi Da,
Hmm.
the sex cult guy out in Hawaii, if you know about Adi Da's
No, I've never heard.
operation out there. Um, there's another girl in the program. She's from Korea, and her dad was like, not her dad, I'm sorry, her uncle was the head of some apocalyptic cult there.
Uh-huh.
She was sort of studying it as something negative, although Adi Da's daughter, I think, was perfectly happy with his questionable legacy there of sexual abuse and exploitation. Um, but yeah, that's what I mean. It's Gandhi and these other ones. They were doing, yeah, they're doing all these weird. I didn't want to like, yeah, that was these girls got really offended in this mysticism class that I had because the instructor was describing the gross stuff that these these guys were doing. And as like old men, and they're just ugh.
Hmm.
And they got like really triggered and offended by that. I'm remembering this incident. But yeah, it's anybody who's seduced by the East and these Oriental religions owes it to themselves to really educate themselves on what the real teachings are, and then what these gurus and these people with their teaching their crazy wisdom
Well,
are really doing
if you want
for
to
their
rail
students.
against misogyny, Buddha is the perfect place to start. Like that's all wacky and they hate women. And in the Tantra in Hindu, yeah, they are very despised the older you get. So what would you say would be like some of the most Gnostic movies? Because we just did Wizard of Oz, with Thomas,
Yeah.
or we did Wicked, I should say. And that's very much about the demiurge and the clockmaker, the wizard behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's a good question on how you define Gnostic. I think some of the most important ones, that spate of movies, ladies. I think before that, though, like Total Recall.
Okay.
And that's where the red pill, as we discuss in the red pill article, that's where the Matrix red pill trope comes from. It comes from Total Recall. And it's so important to compare the scenes because in Total Recall, the red pill is a fake liberation. Like the guy's coming in saying, if you take this, it's going to bring you back to reality. But he's actually tricking him,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have so that movie is kind of in line with this hermeneutic of just endless suspicion, as you can never you're in these just bottomless, endlessly shifting realities, and how do you ever know the truth and who's on your side and who's not? It's just this endless battle between the forces of light and truth and darkness and lies. Um, so Total Recall is an important earlier Gnostic movie, but yeah, you have this in 98, 99. There was a spate of movies, A Truman Show, and The 13th Floor,
Mm-hmm.
and Existence. Remember
Mm-hmm.
Existence,
Mm-hmm.
and of course Matrix. I did not like The Matrix when I saw it. I don't like it now, but I mean, I did not understand why it was a big deal. I wasn't a huge sci-fi fan. Existence was interesting. I even thought The 13th Floor was interesting. I thought Matrix was like very underwhelming, honestly, when I saw it in the theater, but it certainly captured the imagination very quickly of the mass imagination. Um, so and yeah, it's just and then it's come to saturate, and then Gnosticism in various ways has just come to saturate everything.
Mm-hmm.
Major media, major cinema is really saturated with Gnosticism in so many ways.
Well, it's funny because like we try to decode movies, that's me and Jay's thing, or how he started or whatever, and it just ends up being, oh, that's Gnostic, oh, that's Gnostic, oh, that's Platonic, like that's Neoplatonism, that's straight up Satanism, oh, that's like disguised Gnosticism. Even in kids movies like the Lego movie or like Pinocchio, which so in the first edition we talked about Mary Poppins and her sorcery and her influences from mystical places. And now we've got Pinocchio, which I was identifying this as what? Freemasonic, Gnostic, Kabbalistic, Luciferian, the story of creation and the fall of man, and the hero's journey, and an MK Ultra programming script all in the same movie Pinocchio. Do you like Pinocchio?
Yeah, it's a beautiful car. I mean, I don't like it. I guess substantively now. I mean, I don't really approve of it,
Uh,
and it's very dis right. It's very disturbing. Yeah, you watched Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, by the way, too. That other disturbing Pinocchio movie I recommended. I don't know if you saw that from the
oh,
80s.
no, I didn't watch
But
that one.
that one is even yeah, that one is even more disturbing in its way. But yeah, it's the animation is so beautiful. That classic Disney animation is really very beautiful. I mean, it's exquisite as a film. Uh, but yeah, there is a not necessarily a there's a lot of dark, I think, content that in a way is malicious to put that kind of like dark content in a children's movie to kind of subconsciously traumatize children is um, not good. And then yeah, it is basically this Freemasonic occult esoteric allegory, which is pushing a counterfeit spirituality. So in that sense, I don't approve of it. And yes, your article is excellent, diagnosed it very concisely. Yeah, all of the Masonic and occult and Gnostic, yes, and very Gnostic elements that are
Mhm.
woven together in both the book by Collodi, which I've read, and the Disney film. So
Well, so many of the classic children's tales are Gnostic and MK Ultra programming scripts. So, uh, Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Pinocchio. It just kind of sucks that so much of children's content is used for this, mind control initiation into occult milieu, right?
yeah, well, I think it gets really sinister in the 80s, where I do a series on for PsyOp Cinema. I do a premium series on Patreon series focusing on what I call monarch cinema and these movies that are kind of chock full of these monarch mind control symbols and tropes. And people do Sucker Punch, for example. It's pretty self-consciously on display there. But it really, to me, like people ask me, when does this monarch thing start? And you could talk about proto-monarch stuff, and obviously there's mind control films going back, Manchurian Candidate and before. But it's like in the 80s with children's dark fantasy, in
Hmm.
Labyrinth and The Last Unicorn. And in movies we've analyzed that it really is just the whole complex is just undeniably there. And these are children's movies, and uh, yeah, what I see is basically a low intensity form of mind control being carried out through the entertainment industry, focusing on children. Why children? Children are the most impressionable. And if you're trying to sculpt people's values and beliefs and attitudes over a long period of time, not instantly, not get them to vote for your candidate, but to change who they are,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's what's going to happen. And so emerging out of the Cultural Revolution of the 60s and then all the MK Ultra stuff and Phoenix program and all this psychological warfare that went on. I mean, this stuff is making its way in some form, maybe a low intensity form, but it's making its way into Hollywood. And that's why we call the show PsyOp Cinema, because we analyze film as psychological warfare. And then cultural engineering is a very related term. So the magazine and the work we do with the foundation is kind of we look at uh, mass media as in terms of cultural engineering as a vehicle for especially religion, especially like I call that religious engineering,
Hmm.
not a term that I made up, by the way. William Sims Bainbridge, the transhumanist who was studying the process church of the final judgment, got that term from the process church of the final judgment. So that term actually comes from the process church of the final judgment, religious engineering. And I think that's kind of the heart of what I'm interested in. And I mean, today it's the transhumanism. It's these transhumanists who have this anti-transcendent, immanentized, Gnostic, apotheosistic worldview that they're trying to be the demiurges and their own gods. And I mean, however simplistic that's the reality. Like that's their religion. That's their worldview. And it's just I think it's urgent to come to grips with this stuff in a way,
Hmm.
because yeah, I mean, when were we last kind of faced with like these kind of madmen of this kind of stature. It's been a while.
Well, like there's so much of a revolutionary spirit going on now, for all sorts of reasons. And you mentioned, the book Pinocchio. So the author of that, Carlo Collodi, he was an Illuminist Freemason who was a revolutionary, right? So like you said, he is anytime you want to have a like you said, a long-lasting reach, you don't just write like Mein Kampf, you write a children's tale to get ahead of the generations to where you kind of want to steer them. And I mean, Pinocchio is just full of like the perfect ashlar and the rough so Pinocchio is made of wood and he has not yet attained like his perfect form because the God that created him was imperfect, right? And this is the tale of his like journey to that. And the blue fairy is the Pistis Sophia that comes from Sirius and gives him the knowledge, like the serpent in the garden. And like we were talking about before, with the Gnostics view the serpent in a positive way. A lot of them do. And you've even got the Luciferian aspect where he's like striking his finger with this he's the candle, right? But he uses it to the first thing he does when he has the knowledge is sets fire to other things. So it's kind of saying like he's not ready yet. So that's like the fall of man. He's not correctly using the knowledge because he hasn't gone through his initiation. He hasn't met like the coachman and gone to his Calabasas, which is the pleasure island, which actually gets really creepy because Pleasure Island has a lot in common with Little St. James of, Jeff Stein McEffrey fame. And it had its guest villas, a helipad, a pool, underground tunnels, and the temple, which I don't know if you guys had seen the picture of this, but that blue and white striped building on the Epstein Island is actually meant to represent uh, a bathhouse in Aleppo, Syria.
Yeah, that was a great piece of research you did there.
Isn't that weird? Called the Hammam Yalbuga. And so this is a like an Islamic pattern meant to represent the Garden of Jannah or Islam's version of paradise or the Garden of Eden or that, the pleasure island. So lots of MK Ultra stuff in here. He has to go to the abyss. These creepy guys, those always creeped me out when I was a kid. The little black things that help the coachman. And he's clearly the devil, right? He's like the tempter. So, yeah, there's that article on Pinocchio. He finally has his, transhumanist version of his Luciferian apotheosis at the end, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
explain real quick how easily Gnosticism can be steered into transhumanism because it's like, hating of the body. It is has to do with like gender dysphoria or whatever, you're in the wrong body. Flesh is bad. We need to upgrade these meat suits, they call us, with technology. And did you see the newest space movie with Ryan Gosling?
The Hail Mary one?
Yeah.
No, but I did get the documents through the government through FOIA. That's one of the things I do with the Decoding Culture Foundation is I FOIA documents about Hollywood DC collaborations. And yeah, I had multiple Pentagon collaborate. I think NASA as well with Hail Mary. Production assistance agreement signed, everything.
Uh-huh. And what did you find out anything about that movie?
Well, I haven't watched it. I mean, I just know that they so basically they entered into a partnership with. the federal agencies to make a movie, you sign a production
Oh,
assistance agreement, they
uh,
get control over their portrayal, in the film.
right.
Um, so that's what I knew about it, is that I had gotten those documents and put them up via FOIA, but no, I haven't seen it yet, the movie itself. I don't know if I will watch it. Um,
It's entertaining. It's okay. But there was an alien that he encountered. The movie did not go where I thought it was going to go, but it was a like I guess a silicone-based life form or a non carbon-based. It was a different kind of intelligence that was not like us. And this is where I think they're trying to go with like cyborgs and Neuralink and robotic companions. Well, first, they just have to get everybody to hate each other and just focus on AI as their companion. Would you say that's like a prerequisite to the transhumanist agenda?
yeah, to get everybody in the grid,
Yeah.
and wired in to as many as possible, nested into as many false realities as possible, ideally with um, electronic components hooked up to their neurology
Hmm.
to control their whole sensorium. Um, yeah, I was thinking of what you were saying about sex and so-called gender dysphoria and sexual dysphoria, all this stuff. But yeah, this does relate to the ancient Gnostics because yeah, they were very much disgusted with their condition as sexually differentiated beings, and they wanted to overcome it. They wanted to get rid of that. Now, so I said that sort of tendency, just given human nature and the system they're dealing with, is you end up in this basically very degraded satanic form of the system. And if you have the transcendent dimension taken out altogether, it's like it's not even going to have to degenerate very far.
Hmm.
And so there's like so the ancient Gnostics were doing very complicated acts of inversion with these scriptures, whereas most of them were not just saying, "Oh, look, the serpent in Genesis 3 is actually the good guy. It's as simple as that, and we win." But that is kind of what you get with this kind of stupid Gnosticism of the neo-Gnosticism
Uh-huh.
of the transhumanist clique, is you get sort of what I call strict inversion or simple inversion, right? Where just flip the scriptures upside down, just flip everything upside down.
Hmm.
Um, and there they are in Satan's kingdom. They flipped the world upside down. They've turned the world upside down, and many of these major uh, or several of these major transhumanists, including Kurzweil, and Martina Rothblatt, or Martin/Martina Rothblatt. Do you know about this
Mm-mm.
character?
No.
This is the billionaire founder of Sirius XM Radio and Geostar Navigation. Lord Martin Rothblatt
Hmm.
decided created a transhumanist religion called the Terrasem movement, Terasem,
Hmm.
based on the science fiction of based on some science fiction, um, and decided not Martina doing the transition, created a robot, has a wife, black lady, her wife, made a robot, Beta something. I can't remember the number based on the. Yeah, this is so that's example, and that's a good friend of Kurzweil's. Kurzweil wrote like the foreword to the Terrasem book, and then Kurzweil also has this figure of Ramona, if you know about this, has had this female alter ego in Second Life years ago. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
there's a one of the documentaries about Kurzweil profiles, and like I'm trying to remember it. Like he had to, I think he have to kill Ramona, and it was like it was very sad and it was a tragic moment, I think I recall. But yeah, and Ramona is like a rock star and does and Kurzweil is very how do you say it? I mean, he's very unguarded in his attachment to this alter ego.
Hmm.
And so Rothbard has spoken openly about so their interest, his interest I don't Martin, but I can't say her because this is a man. Okay. His interest
Huh.
in virtual realities as well as Kurzweil is directly connected to the dysphoria stuff because uh, Rothbard even said this, like it's more important like to reconfigure your virtual sexual identity than your physical one
Mm.
because we're all going to be virtual anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like a sideshow. So this is a trannyism that's kind of a little bit alien to the postmodern identitarian left woke crowd. This is a real transhumanist trannyism.
Yeah.
I mean, Rothblatt did the whole like meat space thing, but Kurzweil just did Ramona. But there's a lot of this, and of course they're full of pervert. Like look at Sam Altman,
Mm-hmm.
right, who molested his sister. And it just there's a lot of weird sexual stuff and other weird. I mean, Teal drinking the blood, and
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah. I mean, it's really it's kind of a horror show actually studying the super elite that sponsors transhumanism and the transhumanism. I mean, you're going into we're going to a very sort of dark place and humanity, and you see these religions that are, I'm sorry, societies that go religiously crazy, Aztecs and stuff, and they're doing these wild things, sacrificing people to sun god every morning and going insane.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think the AI, how do I say this? I don't want to just call it a hoax. It's not, of course, there's a technology there, but the the way that right they're trying to get people to embrace the AI is part of this anti-human agenda, I think, to get people to accept that they're obsolete and they're unnecessary
Mm-hmm.
and that they can be phased out so we can move into the next phase. Now, Yuval Harari, whom your listeners probably know, your viewers probably know, in his Homo Deus book, uh, he sees like two possible futures. Like one of them is the super like most of humanity is obsolete, but the super elites, the very small minority, they upgrade themselves. As he says, they
Mm-hmm.
upgrade themselves into gods,
Mm-hmm.
his words. The other scenario, which he calls dataism, or the data religions is we're just replaced by the AI. AI is a horrible term, by the way. I remember in the early 2000s when I was starting undergraduate school, there was a debate in philosophy of mind around whether machines can become sentient. And the AI hypothesis was they could, and you're against AI. Well, I think they lost that argument philosophically, or they certainly didn't win it, but the AI just got smuggled into, so it psychologically conditions people to believe that this is conscious,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like destructive of human consciousness. And it's saying we don't need human consciousness anymore. And it's literally trying to make human consciousness obsolete for something that's not even alive. It's not another creature. Like this isn't
Right.
evolving anything. This is a psychosis. And so related to this, and this is something that the Collins brothers touch on in their article, Automated Autotheism Part 2 in this volume, is the AI psychosis we're seeing where people are literally being driven to psychosis by, I don't know how you can explain these things, these AIs or so-called chatbots really, right? Are quote saying to people and all the like literally like satanic demonic things that are
Mm-hmm.
emanating from that space, but that's very related to me. I mean, I really do, people can think this is weird or crazy, but I'm not a, I have no expertise in technology, but my sense of what I have no reason, these are not sentient, they're just not conscious, but I think that this sort of thing can possibly be channeling, let's say, discarnate intelligences that aren't our friends, otherwise known as demons.
Yeah.
Um, and in some of these cases where people are being driven to suicide by these things, that I can't think the creators of these chatbots could explain why it's saying some of the stuff it's saying. So that's at least a that's at least can't be ruled out that demons are getting in there
Well,
and
no,
doing it.
I don't think AI is a demon, but I think it can be an interface for one.
Yeah.
Sort of like a
That's kind of Richard Stanley's hardware, which I analyzed with Jay. And Stanley's the one who we have a Richard Stanley quote at the beginning of the volume where he says that one could one could see the whole of the mass media as it stands today as some sort of extension of Gnostic faith. He said that in
Hmm.
1994. And
Oh
his movie
wow.
Hardware is kind of showing the technology being used by demons.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the technology that we have comes from people, dabbling in spiritualism. I mean, I'm thinking of the television set, or just even cameras. Like all of that era was very trying to get in touch with spirits on the other side and technology itself. So I was just reading a little bit about the Book of Enoch, and it reminded me that the Watchers, the fallen angels, gave all of this technology to the people so that they could interface with them uh, more easily, right?
Yes, indeed. So it's a and Richard Stanley, people may or may not know himself, like openly, deeply into the occult, um, deep occultist. And there's a movie called Demon Seed from 76, 77 by a guy
Yeah,
named
I heard
Donald
that.
Cammell.
Robot baby, right?
Yeah, so but Donald Cammell, as he puts it, literally grew up bouncing on Aleister Crowley's knee. Cammell's father wrote an admiring biography of his friend Aleister Crowley,
Uh-huh.
and Cammell goes on to work with Kenneth Anger and to be he's one of the alpha channels, if you will, for Crowleyism in Hollywood. And
Mm-hmm.
Cammell himself wasn't a huge director, but he was very influential, and it's just like Anger in the Underground. But yeah, Demon Seed is the same thing. It's like a demon using it's like a smart home. And
Yeah.
it's like this is the study of the smart home, and then like
Proteus.
the smart home,
Yeah.
yeah, takes over, and then it's gonna like breed with her and create the it's wild,
Yeah,
yeah.
it keeps the
Um,
human woman hostage, and he's like, I am Proteus, I will breed with you. And they even said the transmission is from Sirius.
wow, yeah, they do. And remember the weird like hybrid demon techno baby thing?
Yeah, the
Like it's like
golden
so it's like
like robot baby. Yes. So, that is very alchemical, as they would
yeah.
say. And yeah, really weird movie, Demon Seed. Well, have you been keeping up with NASA shenanigans?
Well, I don't keep up with it closely, but I did see the Artemis thing, and wow, that's so relevant to our last episode that we did together, the Armageddon
Yeah.
episode. Because I think that was it in that one or the one before. I think it was in that one where I was talking about Fly Me to the Moon, the movie, which was originally called Project Artemis, which is the name of this latest moon project. Which in the movie, Project Artemis is the name of a fake moon project to fake the Apollo 11 moon landing. And I use all this and some other examples this is in my NASA part two article, my second, which is in volume two of Cultural Engineering Studies. I explore how NASA has been playing these occult mind games with people and how they've supported movies, not just that, but movies like Capricorn One. People
Hmm.
can believe it. NASA supported it. Filmed the Marshall Space Center, a movie where they're faking a Mars mission. So NASA, whatever's going on with this stuff, NASA has been involved in playing these, dare I say, Gnostic like mind games, archonic mind games
Exactly. Like
with
in
the public.
Inception lies and Inception, like just layers and levels of lies. And then look, what I found
Actually a character
here.
in Mad Max in 2015. Yeah,
They're
NASA
actors.
astronaut Christina Koch appeared as one of the Vuvolini in the 2015 Mad Max Fury Road. Then just 10 years later, she's going to the moon. What an exciting life, huh? Apparently, she's only even been an astronaut for only 13 years. She completed her candidate training in 2015, the same year that she was filming to be in a movie. Forget about the words appearing on the stuffed animal and then him quickly moving it out of the way. Let's not forget about how the bag phased directly through Buddy's ear right here. What the hell is he even doing? Let's not forget the vanishing red dot. terrible quality video, even though you couldn't take a bad quality video nowadays, even if you tried. 1995 digital camera. Video from inside the ship from the entire 10-day trip, except for when they're free falling at 25,000 miles per hour. No close-up shots either. They're making sure they're keeping their distance for some reason. None of this is melting, even though this fucking ship would be hotter than lava. A crew going up and touching the ship and their hands are somehow not burning off. Here's a little bonus clip from a separate team of dumbasses. Why did the ball fall straight to the floor if they're in space? Do you know that Christina Koch was...
That's not the only time they've been caught doing stage magic, right?
Yeah, yeah, indeed. That it reminded me too. I watched a video that the Challenger, the astronauts that died was on the Challenger. Someone hunted down several people with identical names with this college professor that looked identical.
Hmm.
Have you seen this before? Maybe I thought maybe you sent me this too. And like the lady, the reaction of one of them was very odd. I mean, it was like running away, and um, yeah, it's who knows what's real and what's not. But that's part of that. That's the power that they're projecting is the
Yeah.
power over your reality, over what you think is real and what's not real is, from their point of view, is the power of reality
Mhm.
itself, because there is no God above themselves. There is no human nature. There's no essence to reality. Everything at an ontological level, even, is just totally malleable. And so, what people perceive and what is real are deeply entangled, and that is in that movie, Fly Me to the Moon.
Hmm.
The Scarlet Trans. I mean, that's part of the message also within the movie. And she's this marketing director who's trying to sort of marry what NASA is doing to the advertising industry. And the movie is like a weird love letter to NASA's marriage with the perception manipulation industries.
Yeah.
In addition to the stuff I just told you about, the Artemis and the fake, because I mean the movie literally has a fake. It's a conspiracy movie, so totally supported by NASA. Space Act. NASA has signed a Space Act agreement. That's their production assistance agreement
Hmm.
with like a dozen movies really in
Hmm.
in the last 20 years, and that was one of them. That was a big NASA project. Yeah.
And just real quick to remind everybody, the entire space program was started as ritual magic, occultism by Jack Parsons, doing rituals to Pan, trying to shoot
Yeah.
dicks into space. Basically, they want to permeate the atmosphere with their DNA. That's why Elon Musk is obsessed with babies in space, and that's why Jeffrey Epstein was having his Zorro Ranch. He wanted to populate the universe with his DNA. That's why you have Mormons trying to do, Mormon space wives, as Jay's cringecore song talks about. So as we kind of wind down and segue into our next show, going to be with the Collins brothers, who also have some great articles in this issue. How would you say that Gnosticism relates to this new alien revelation, this sort of pseudo invasion, or maybe upcoming
Yeah.
fake and gay alien invasion? I'm thinking of the Alien movie franchise because that is about transhumanism. That's got the cyborg element, the AI, the finding your creator and he hates you at the end of the movie. So how would you say that the Gnosticism of, Colossians is setting the stage for us to accept the aliens as our space brothers or creators?
Well, it's like the hermeneutics here of inversion, right?
Uh-huh.
Is that the now the fallen angels are our friends. I remember if you Timothy Wiley, who is a member of the like one of the most important members of the process Church of the Final Judgment, who went on to a career in New Age spirituality. He wrote this series of books where he was like, and he, because when he was in the process church, he claimed to be channeling the fallen angels. They announced
Mhm.
themselves as fallen angels, and he wrote this series of books about them and their story. And I guess it was like these are not the story is sort of like their literal their transmission, even though he put it in the form of like a novel. But it's basically like, look, the fallen angels are coming. They're saying, we did some bad things in the past, but we've changed. We want to give you some technology. and we're good now. We've cleaned up our act. Like I was listening to him describe this. He died some years ago. I'm listening to him describe this in like a video maybe 5, 6 years ago. It's like I was like astonished, like at the naivety. Like he seems to really believe this guy is so deluded.
Yeah.
And he probably were. That's what these demons told him. They're like, yeah, we're coming, we want to help humanity now. We're trying to bring in this one world government utopia to help you. Don't believe all that. Okay, well, or you know what? Maybe you do believe. Maybe some of it is true, but like, so they're getting it's a little more sophisticated interpretation. Like while he wasn't inclined to believe like the simple flip of it, so they're like, okay, we did bad things in the past, but what's happened is it's changed now. So now we're good, and
Oh,
you need to accept us. Um, so the aliens are, obviously sort of a type of these fallen beings that are coming to bring us a one world government.
mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I think there's something, yeah, very much to that whole blue beam conspiracy. We're seeing the psyop roll down. So on the DCF website, I've mentioned it before, a whole bunch of the Collins brothers, Paul and Philip Collins brothers, articles on this. To me, they've done their body of work on the alien deception, as they call it, or the UFO deception.
Uh-huh.
But the fingerprints of, and more than the fingerprints of intelligence agencies and military psyop people and everything is just that's what the ufology thing is created by just the CIA and military intelligence, and it's some of it's that cast of characters in John Ronson's The Men Who Stare at Goats and Colonel Alexander and that group of people, and that's all overlaps with mind control and MK Ultra and that
And meditation.
territory as well. Yeah, the bringing the new age, basically intelligence and military uniting it to the new age, and what's his name? First Earth Battalion, Jim Channon,
Hmm.
and that's where the UFO. That's where a lot of the UFO stuff is coming out of the Roswell thing. Is the Collins brothers? They lay all of this stuff out in great detail, and they talk about these law firms too, like this guy, this so-called whistleblower from military intelligence who just within the last couple of years who give that testimony where he was being represented by this law firm, which is obviously a CIA front. It's run by CIA people. It's an intelligence front, and the Mellon family involved in this. And you've got the Mellon who is deputy assistant secretary of defense for intelligence. And the Mellon family has been funding the psychedelic research and the new age. And it's so transparent, right? The
Hmm.
psyop. I mean, maybe every twist and turn of it, what they're doing isn't transparent, but that this is a psyop, like that's an easy one now. So now that you've got this pen as a psyop, we're watching this unfold, and they're trying to do this whole disclosure thing. And the movie called Disclosure Day, right? The
Hmm.
Spielberg movie actually has the word in there, the age of disclosure. The Collins brothers were they have a series Deception Through Disclosure. They were revealing the whole disclosure thing was a psyop for years. And so
Yeah.
we'll probably do a psyop cinema episode with them on the Spielberg movie, I think, later this summer after it comes
Okay.
out.
Good idea.
um, so yeah, very very interested in the alien deception. I can't follow every twist and turn with all my other areas of interest and research, but I rely on the Collins brothers to keep me abreast of it.
Well, the idea that the aliens created us and then left and then came back to, visit us after we evolved or whatever, that's called like panspermia, right? And that's in the Prometheus franchise. And I just found this, it's keeping with the theme. So here's a picture of the lobby of SpaceX Starlink factory in Bastrop, Texas. Uh, they call it the Earth to Mars orbital transfer eclipse. I don't know if you can see that. So it is sort of an orbity thing, but the esoteric reading of that, in my opinion, is a very deep symbol. How would I say that? The symbolism is deep because of the circumpunct aspects. So we can talk, actually, we talked about the circumpunct in the show with Baselit Analyzer. But so can you see that, Brett?
Sorry, I had my mute on. Yes, yes, no, I can
Okay.
see it.
So this is the lobby of SpaceX Starlink in Texas, right? That is Elon Musk's logo there. And then,
Yeah.
did you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Which looks a lot like this, right? This is a Crowley sigil. It's a phallus looking, it's the one-eyed, serpent, if you're looking
And
at
of
it from
course,
like
Elon dresses up as the Antichrist for Halloween.
yeah.
He and Peter Thiel are competing to be the Antichrist, I suppose.
Yeah, so we are continuing with the sex theme in rocketry through Elon Musk and the idea that aliens, panspermiate us. And Jay and I actually ended up going through the UFO museum in Roswell, which was a really goofy, stop on the road trip. And this is a mural from that. And then this like goofy, aliens in jars, X-Files type stuff. But let me show you this one real quick. This picture. So why does he have a cross around his neck? So it's an alien wearing, a Christian cross because they're gonna say that they were the creators, right? They're gonna be like, we actually created all of the religions, and we're back to straighten it out because you guys can't handle it. Would you agree?
Yeah, and with Elon, there's also a link to Total Recall because you have this. You know about this, right? What's the novel about Elon as the King of Mars?
Oh, Werner von
Um,
Braun,
do you know this?
um,
Yeah, right.
Mission to Mars,
And
or what is it? Yeah, because
yeah,
Elon was a really
Project Mars,
yes,
the
Elon.
Elon. And in in Total Recall Revolt, the plot revolves around uh this supposed colony of Mars and the King of Mars and
Mhm.
uh
And Quado,
but
a little chest burster.
yeah, that's weird. That thing looks so weird. Yeah, that those scenes are very odd. The body horror stuff in those scenes, but yeah. So a lot of this, whatever you want to call it, this neo-Gnostic Luciferian alien mythos is something that yeah we spent some time analyzing. We talked about Arthur C. Clarke and 2001: A Space Odyssey, some of our other episodes, but yeah, this is. This post-Christian religion of the future, New World Order religion. This is one variant of it, and just I don't know when this is going to be published. This episode, but just in the news the other day was pastors being summoned to get ready to prepare their flocks for the aliens.
Hmm.
Um, a movie that is really revelatory about this is that the Spider-Man Far From Home movie, where the Mysterio character, played by Gyllenhaal, gets control over the satellite system, Iron Man's satellite system, and he uses it to control this army of drones that use a 3D projection technology to fake an alien invasion so he can be a
Oh, uh-huh,
hero.
uh-huh.
It's Project Bluebeam. And then the whole movie is like riddled through with all this talk about witchcraft and the age of witchcraft and
It's
objective
Spider-Man what?
reality. The Far From Home, the one where he
Oh,
goes to the second one in that recent I couldn't get through the one after that, but I watched the first two. But yeah, that one was I saw that in the theater actually, and it's like jaw-droppingly revelatory. I'm surprised more people don't talk about that, and also that this is the element of witchcraft and the occult that's tied in with all this. It's extremely, but yeah, so it's like it's like a Project Bluebeam on screen in a Marvel movie. That kind of tech, and then and that was around the time when we were seeing them flexing some of that technology, some of that holographic projection technology. And of course, I imagine the powers that be have. I'm not a believer in some of these crypto tech thing, or especially not this stuff about the aliens gave us, CDs and all this other stuff. We've been reverse
uh-huh.
engineering it. I think that's part of a psyop. But of course, we can imagine the DARPA people, whenever they're going to stay a few generations ahead with some of the tech.
Mhm.
And so I imagine they can project stuff that could look more real than anybody knows about. But isn't it ironic that they're going to try to pull this off at a time when nobody has any reason to believe it anymore? And we've seen all these stupid hoaxes with drone swarms and like why anybody would believe it is at this point if you know this makes me think of if there's another you asked me about Gnostic movies and you ever seen Star Trek 5, the one that Shatner himself directed from 1988? Because
Um,
in Star Trek 5, it's widely reviled by Star Trek fans, but it's
uh,
an interesting movie where there's this prophet who's obviously supposed to be like a form of Jesus called Cybok, and he's a Vulcan, and he's like a shaman and a healer, and he's getting these messages from this god out there in the universe, and he like hijacks the spacecraft to take it out to they meet this god, and so he drags Shatner and Spock out there, but it's this false god, but it takes on the appearances of all the of Buddha or Jesus or whatever. It takes on all the appearances of all these different gods, but it's actually this like evil demiurge god that's trying to get them to do their will.
yeah,
And I mean, it's almost like a Wizard of Oz moment where it turns like into the evil Wizard of Oz. God, he gets very angry, and Spock like figures out why real God would never be this mean and angry, and you're a bad God,
yeah,
kind of showdown. They they have with them, and it makes me think of that movie as well. Is a very very Gnostic exo theology, Gnostic deception. Space movies, and really the first Star Trek, which was based on a script called The God Thing, which
hmm
ends up being part of that's used in the fifth one. But the first one is a very Gnostic movie. I'm going to use it in this new article I wrote when I was getting into that PhD program at Rice. Actually, when I wanted to study Gnosticism, I wrote an article about Gnosticism in Star Trek,
hmm
in the show and in the not in like Next Generation, these other series, but just in the with the original cast. And yeah, there's a ton of that in the show, and then especially like in the first movie and the fifth movie are shot through with these techno Gnostic themes.
Well, the first one I mentioned sometimes because that's the one with V'ger, right? The probe that went through a black hole and got consciousness and came back and killed his girlfriend and took over the
But it
girlfriend.
thinks it's a god, but it's
Yeah,
not really a god.
it's just
Yeah.
a consciousness that needs a it's discarnate and needs a body, and then they end up merging together at the end in a very Arthur C. Clarke transhumanist way. Yeah, Star Trek one's really weird. And speaking of Captain Kirk and like panspermia, you had mentioned that the according to some Gnostics, Justin, the pseudo-Gnostic, the Gnos is the serpent who commits adultery with Eve. So there's like a sexual component mixing hybrid. Uh, what if
That's
the
a wild myth. That's a wild myth, yeah, with the serpent named Eden and the Baruch and like the war between these male and female. And the Gnostics tend to be either they want androgyny or they're anti-female, kind of
Hmm.
like the some of the other group we were talking about. Yeah, they tend to be anti, sort of getting rid of the feminine elements,
Mhm.
or
Like Buddhists,
there's this what's up?
like Buddhists too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Maybe the aliens will help us with our birth rates. So because I think that is a weird thing to start pushing into now too. So we've got this like threat of World War III, we've got these nuclear threats, we've got these environmental threats, we've got this now the new thing to freak out about is birth rates. So that's like kind of a weird thing to make everybody concerned about. Um, Maybe that they could use that element too, like you're dying, and so now we're the race that is here to help replenish you or some crazy thing like that. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Dark City, there's kind of like the converse of that, well, where it's like the aliens are dying or something, so they're
Mhm.
trying to come and latch onto the humans to figure out how to figure out how to save their race.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Dark City is like so like obviously has these MK Ultra elements to it. And the rat in the maze, making me thinking about something else too, is like this rat in the maze element of it too. Of like getting the subject or the viewer lost in this like rabbit's warren of fake realities and blind alleys and stuff. And there's a kind of a bad movie in recent years on the it's called the Mandela effect, and people will know what that silly Mandela effect idea is. But I really think the Mandela effect thing is a psyop. Like I don't
Mm,
think it's just an organic thing that somebody came up with.
yeah.
I really I can't prove that, but my preliminary research suggests to me that this is some kind of deliberate psyop. In that movie that pushes that, it literally opens with like rats in a maze, which is you, the viewer.
Hmm.
Like you're the rat being moved around, in this maze. Um,
Yeah.
so our culture is defined by this dynamic that you see portrayed in its revelation of the method, what you see portrayed in these heavily Gnosticized Hollywood movies. It is a picture of our reality. And I mean, so Plato's cave, he meant that to be a picture of society, as well, that people are trapped in a conventional view, a false reality. They don't have access to the true reality. But in this form of it, there is no true reality. It's all just manufactured anyway.
Well,
So the truth is who makes it. It's who's making the culture. It's power over truth, really, right?
well, the algorithm now is got everybody in their own sort of, Plato's cave because the front page news for me is not the same as the front page news for you. And the algorithm knows what angers you, it knows what turns you on, it knows what you desire, it knows what you want to shop for, it knows the person that you can't stand to hear from is going to push that on you. And they've proven that the engagement is driven by rage bait now, even more so than like sexual things. It's like if they can make you angry, they can keep you on the platform longer. And now we all have our own interpretation of what reality is, thanks to this algorithmic way that we get information.
Yeah. 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 We're getting increasingly like embedded, in these uh digital coral reefs, labyrinths, that we're getting buried in. So I guess that's the urge. Before I said I want to, I promised the other folks at the DCF I would mention that you get 20% off of, I think it's just the third volume. Maybe you can buy them together,
Mhm.
but I think just off the third volume, if you use the promo code Gnosticism,
Oh, okay.
that's GNOSTICISM for those who don't know it. Yes, you can get, and the one in your left hand is the third one, which I thought like evokes kind of a dark city like
Hmm.
noirish, techno noirish scene there on the left one, and then the one in your right hand, yeah, is the more of the transhumanism themed
Yeah.
um, articles. That was our last issue, and hopefully we'll get another one out by the end of the year. And we have some new authors, some exciting new authors. But yeah, we featured a lot of great authors, of course, Jay, and then Jason Horsley's written for us, and Stephen DeLay and the Collins brothers. So really proud of what we've been able to accomplish in 3 volumes. And the site hosts a huge archive, the Decoding Culture Foundation site hosts a huge archive of documents pertaining to the relationship between Hollywood and Washington, D.C. I've tried not just ones I've obtained through FOIA, but stuff from other researchers. I've tried to create sort of a master archive. So we're looking for more authors and people, researchers, and people that especially want to comb through some of those documents and write articles using them. Um, that's part of what the magazine, the research anthology is kind of a vehicle also for continuing that research. Um, so yeah, so thanks for having me on, Jamie. I hope we can hope you'll have, you're gonna have the Collins brothers, hope you'll have on Thomas and perhaps some of our other authors, and perhaps you or Jay will submit some more great content for us.
Awesome. So the first one with Mary Poppins, I don't have that one at this house, but that is also a great addition. These are beautiful to lay out on your coffee table. Like you said, they are research anthology, meticulously edited and full color and really timely, interesting, thought-provoking content. So thank you for coming. I think this is our third show, and I'm sure there will be many more to come. And everybody stay tuned for the Collins brothers and the UFO deception. Really excited about that. And if you want to, were you going to show me something in there?
Well, this is the beginning of your article, A Spoonful of Mystics
Oh,
from
uh-huh. Yep.
the first one.
Yes.
So yeah, that was in CES number one.
Yeah, so Gurdjieff was the mystic that influenced P.L. Travers to write Mary Poppins. But if you want to get out of your Plato's cave and into real life, I encourage everybody to see if they can make it to Montanica, the conference in Montana with Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, and Brett's gonna be there.
I'll
Dirt
be
Pro
there.
Rollins is gonna be there. All of the cool kids are gonna be there. So, was there anything you want to say about that?
No, I'm very excited. I'm going to be there, and yeah, it's going to be. I'm very excited to be able to go. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it, and then I was, so I'm really excited to be there. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. I just want to remind people to PsyOp Cinema as well. We're, Patreon, Spotify, X. That's the cinema show that I do with Thomas.
Nice. Well, go see if you can get up there to Montana and shake Brett's hand for being such a smarty pants. And thank you for coming on, and we will see you next time.